My name is Virginia Rorschach, like the Rorschach inkblot test, spelled the same way. And my husband and I came in 1952. He had just finished his PhD at MIT and was appointed by Dr. Houston as a young instructor in physics. And he, through the years, worked his way up to chairman of the department a couple of times, but he really loved to teach. And he taught huge freshman classes as well as upperclassmen too, and won many. I think he won all the George Brown Awards in the course of many years, and was also, in those days, the faculty was smaller, and so you were called upon, or the men were called upon, to be on practically every committee you can imagine. And so we were on the athletic committee at one point, and we went with the football team to all points away, and the games here, and so on. And he was on just every other academic committee that you can imagine, and he loved it. He loved teaching. It was his really one thing. And I'll have to tell you one funny story about when we first came. Harold A. Wilson, Dr. Wilson, was one of the first men. He was a physicist that Dr. Lovett appointed to become a faculty member. He was from McGill in Canada. And he was a nuclear physicist, and he would come out of the physics building, the back door. It was a rather rough parking lot, and he would just empty his pockets and throw all this nuclear waste out and so on. And so nobody thought anything about it. And Harold Wilson lived to be 92 or 3 years old and so on. But years later, the present chairman of the physics department decided to make a garden out of this parking lot, what had been this parking lot. And so they cleared it all out, and they ordered the trees and the grass and so on. And lo and behold, the whole place was radioactive. And they had to spend all the money that they were going to use on the garden to clean up the nuclear waste. And I thought that was, it was such an amazing story, because people just wouldn't think of doing that now. Would be very careful of what you do. In fact, I think they are very careful of disposing of nuclear waste and so on like that. But that was one thing that happened. And then in the other early days, Dr. Houston was a physicist himself. And so he had, I think it was 1953. We'd been here a year, and Dr. Houston had an international physics meeting, and had very well-known physicists come from all over the country, like Eugene Wigner and Robert Feynman, and these were, in those days, Robert Feynman was a very young man. He had not won the Nobel Prize yet, but later did, when I don't know if you're familiar with his book, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, and he was quite an interesting character, as were the others. But at any rate, I was a young woman at the time, and there was another couple that came the same year we did, and Bernice and Cal Class. And Mrs. Bonner, whose husband Tom was chairman of the department, asked Bernice and I to help her. Neither one of us had children, and we were free to help her. And so she asked us to help her with all of the entertaining of these large meetings and so on. And really, it was quite an experience, and we learned an awful lot. Later, another friend in the physics department said, "You learn to be faculty wives from Yara Bonner." And she taught us how to arrange flowers and how to, they had what they called a colloquium after once a week after a seminar in the physics department. And Yara Bonner, who was from Czechoslovakia, always had everyone come to her house for a very simple dinner. And Bernice and I always helped her, but it was amazing because of course there weren't that many people. There were probably 5 or 6 or 7 physicists in the faculty, but then there were graduate students and others, and she would probably have a house full of 20, 25 people, and she did that every Wednesday after colloquium for years and years and years. So, and I guess that's about all. The only thing that's outstanding is there was a picnic in the fall, but just as school began, and it was sort of a way of all the departments introducing their new faculty members to the rest of the faculty. The faculty was small enough then so that they could do that. And so we all met, usually down by the stadium, where the stadium is now. And everybody brought each department everybody brought a dish, and somebody would have that all organized. And then after everyone had eaten, and all the children were running around having a wonderful time, after everyone had eaten, then you would take your new members around and introduce them to other departments. And so really, in a way, it was so wonderful because you got to know people in other departments very readily, and we'd have dinner parties of 6 or 8 people, and you might have an English couple and a history couple and a physics couple, and so you got to know people. And now, of course, the school is too large to do that, and they don't do it. So, but at any rate, those were wonderful days. I think promoting friendship and was the greatest thing, and service to the community too. We always did a lot of different things. Like now we have the graduate student loan closet, which benefits the graduate students a lot, especially the ones that come from a long distance, like China, and they can't bring pillows and desks and things like that. So the graduate student loan closet has been one of our big things, and we just now, I don't know if you heard them voting on that a while ago or not, but we've just set up a grant, a $2,000 grant for some student that might need some extra help to stay in school. And so we'll continue that every year. And those are really the most things we have done. I think the earlier women, like the older than even I, which is hard to believe, but like Mrs. Bray and Mrs. Zonoff and so on, during the Second World War and the First World War even, they did things for the Red Cross. They rolled bandages, and they knitted socks for the men, and they did more of that kind of thing.